my videos about writing AI applications. So today we're talking about turning unstructured data into structured data. So this is pretty important because most of the information on the internet is actually unstructured. Structured data is data that you could look at and say, I know what kind of format it is. So you have XML files, you have JSON files, you have various file formats that follow a certain structure. Certain documents may follow a structure, but they're still unstructured data. If it's a PDF, a Word document, text file, audio, video, anything like that, it's going to be unstructured. So one of the first things you're going to want to do is to be able to turn the unstructured data into something structured. So for example, a fairly simple way of doing it is we could take, so I had Olama make this, and this is the text, this is the translation, and so if I put this in here and I just say, so it's actually calling a Streamlit application in the, actually no, it's not, it's Fast API on the back end. But then you see it turned what was entered here into something structured. So it actually returned back a JSON. So it's a format that I actually know what it is. And the states, by the way, is I have like Canadian, American, and Mexican states in here. So it had to find the best match. But so this is actually pretty useful. This is a small part of a larger application. And I'll show you the larger application in a moment. But so this is, I just use HTML to do this, and so it so I have my CSS I just embedded in here. This is a simple little app that I did, and then it uses 2 JavaScript files that I made just to test it out, and they're not really anything too terribly exciting, but they're actually used for a lot of other applications, for the larger applications than just this. So I actually pull down transformers here because part of what the large application will do, you can download really tiny models. So for example, I downloaded a summarization model. It's a BERT model, and then you can use that within the browser. So you don't always have to call the backend to be able to do the processing, and that's the idea of using the transformer library from is to sometimes for small things just do it within the browser. That way you get free scaling. But so this also, by the way, you can upload audio files and record yourself, and it will actually do the same thing. The idea behind this is just if you're, let's say, a gym company and you're someone's leaving voicemail, or they send an email to you, you can pull out the information you want, and then you can put it in here. The larger application is actually, is this one here. So you could just say, my name is Frank Gehry, and he was actually an architect, and this is to create tickets for a e-commerce application. So my account is, and I am wondering what my order status is. So I haven't worked much on this application in a while, but the idea being you would so the summarization was done locally, and so it would summarize it here, and then it would start to populate these. But like I said, I haven't gotten that far yet on it. And then the idea is that you could reply to the customer. You could ask the AI assistant to look at a RAG system, which we'll be talking about at some point, RAG, soon, or write a suggested reply to the customer. And this might actually work. I'm not certain if it does. Do I politely tell them their order was lost? And so the idea being that a customer rep could be looking up information, could ask for help, and it will take into account what you've done before and respond back. And but that's that application. But in most applications, you're going to want to figure out how to. So it printed out here, but I actually don't have it coming up to the front yet. So let's see what it said, just out of curiosity. So I like to have it give 3 options. And so you have the empathic one, concise and professional, and focusing on resolution. So the idea being that it could come back and at some point it would actually print it down here, what's in here, and then you could see what the you could figure out how you want to respond. That's the basic idea here. So, but that's where that is. So to do this, by the way, that's what's going to be important for this video, is what you do is we go to the API program and I can't drag it down farther. Oh, you'll notice that this is running on port 5500. So this is one of the earlier applications where I started to use Coder to be my web server. And then I quickly moved away from that because I figured out that that's not a great choice. But early on, if you don't want to use something like Streamlit, this is actually not a bad approach. I just realized that it would not be the correct approach for me. But so for example, this you would have endpoints where you could get an audio file, and so I found that I like Gemma 3, and like I said, when you use Gemma 3, you need to make certain to strip the stuff out because it will otherwise create problems. But let's see here. Now I'm wondering where this is actually at. Oops. Name, address. Oh. Okay, so what I do when I'm structuring these is I use Pedantic. I find it to be helpful here, and I will tell it a description of every field. So it knows the type, it knows the description, and then what I do is I pass in the JSON, and then let's see. So I take the address, the name address. I get the JSON schema. I then turn that into a string, and I tell it to indent just because it's easier to read. And now the important part is, please provide a JSON object representing a user profile. The JSON object must strictly adhere to the following JSON schema. So I give it the schema. This is why I like pedantic. And then ensure that the response is a valid JSON object and contains all required fields as per the schema. And the data comes from this. Sometimes I will actually put this in single quotes, for example, just to make certain that it understands that. Anytime I'm doing something where I'm trying to give it a name or something, I tend to put quotes around it just because it seems to work better. It seems to highlight it better. And then I pass it to Gemma 3. And then, like I said, I strip everything out. I take the JSON, I pass it into name address. I do a lot of replacing of some extra things. It comes back with, it escapes the double quote, so I have to strip that out. It puts /ns in there, so I strip those out. So you're going to want to look at the response and figure out how do you want to clean it up before you pass it back. This line here is probably the most important, because if you're escaping the double quotes, then it won't actually be able to turn it back into a JSON object, which is annoying. So it's a pain to troubleshoot. So, and then I just convert that, and then I just return it. And I could actually it'll tell me here to use model validate instead, but I'm not really doing much with this, so I'm just leaving it this way. But that's the basic idea, is make certain to be very clear what it is that you're trying to do. You'll see the same kind of thing when I was showing my recipe program, where it would turn it into, it would try and populate the fields. Same kind of idea. You give it a JSON object, and then you tell it to find the correct field. That's why I put it in the description. Try and be very clear in your description, because it will help a lot for it to be able to, like, first name of the user, last name of the user, phone number of the user. I wanted it to understand. I don't want it to just go by the name. So, like line 1. Well, what is line 1? The first line of the address of the user. You'll see that's why line 2 was undefined, because actually I have it commented out. And then the zip or postal code of the user, because sometimes in some countries they'll refer to a zip code or a postal code. So you may want to call it both, and then it knows to put it into zip code. So that's the basic idea there. This is a short video, but you're going to be seeing a lot more of where I'm taking unstructured data and turning it into something I can actually use. Because by having it structured, now your application knows how to use it. That's basically it. So have a good day.